which is an under-resourced area, and so I'm here to kind of learn about how food affects everyone.
My name is Kieran. I was kind of forced to come to the conference. It was offered as extra credit in my class, and I'm like, okay, we'll just go. I found the first hour the most interesting hour in my life. I like saw this movie, Food.Inc. And it opened my eyes to this like hidden world. And I'm just here, and I read the description for this conference, and I'm like, oh my god, I want to go to this class, and I'm just here, and I want to learn, and yeah.
I'm glad you. I'm Isabella, and I'm a grad student, but I'm between schools and I'm between majors, and sustainability is just one of my interests that I'm considering majoring in.
Cool. My name's Julie. I also came from LA. I work at a food bank in Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Regional Food Bank, and I think, sort of had a similar experience to you in the last 2 years, just really working at the food bank and having my eyes open to a lot of the issues around food and the food system in America and how it impacts everyone. So I'm just really excited to be here.
Awesome. I can tell you a little bit more about myself than the fact that I don't know anything. I have been part of the food and justice community, here's a few credentials that will either make you run from the room or make you think, maybe she knows a little bit of what she's talking about. My background is Mennonite Quaker. I served for 6 years as Peace and Justice Coordinator for Pacific Southwest Mennonite Conference, which is the part of the kind of west of the Rockies where the real Mennonites are. And one of the things that we talked about was deconstructing race in class. One of the things that I've done over the last 15 years of my life is try to figure out how to be a Mennonite in a German-Swiss culture, how I can bring myself into that and get rid of the stuff that doesn't matter. That's been the story of race and of my spiritual journey. And I'm bringing that up here because we can't talk about any of this, I think, without talking about our internal selves and our internal lives. Let's look at some of these words. I'm going to sit down because, you know, I want to. Does anyone have any questions? Or does anyone find any of these words funky? Has anyone not seen them or not seen them in this kind of combination? Okay. Any others? Has anyone ever wondered what a food desert is? Yes. How about apartheid? Does everyone know what that means?
No.
Okay. What about privilege?
I'm American, but I don't know nothing about that either.
Got a thing. How about supermarket scarcity? Oh my gosh. How about justice? Absolutely. Notice that every single one of these things are done. All of these things are part of the things that we talk about when we talk about food and class and race and who has it and who doesn't, who has to work really hard to procure it and who doesn't. We're going to talk about all of this. I'm going to give you some quick definitions. Redlining usually is a real estate term. It talks about areas that literally, they used to be redlined. And actually, they say they don't do it anymore, but they do. If this is San Diego, and this is a part of town that people consider a little shaky, what lenders used to do is they draw a map, a red line around the boundaries where they wouldn't lend. Where if you were going to buy property, you bought it cash. That meant that very few people who actually lived within that boundary could afford to own property. Also, it also decided that this property and the people who lived in it weren't worth very much. And so people who did think that they were worth something and could get out, did. What's another name for that? White flight. White flight. So, what do you wind up having here is poorer, usually browner. And that's exactly what I'm talking about when I'm talking about redlining. Basically, deciding that a part of a town or a part of our shared experience is not worth taking care of. I'm going to give you an interesting statistic. There are at least three zip codes in this county without a full-service supermarket. Not a Vons, not an Albertsons, not a Ralph's, not a Food for Less, not one. We'll talk about that later. This has a lot to do with this. Supermarket scarcity. There are places where within a 5-mile radius you can find like 5 different grocery stores selling about 18 different kinds of bread, am I right? 14 kinds of carrot juice, and 18 different kinds of squash in case you are so inclined. There are places where you can't do that, where you literally cannot find a fresh vegetable, where you're eating canned, or if you're very, very lucky, frozen. There's nothing wrong with that necessarily. I eat frozen, but it should be able to be a choice. What's a part of that? Does anyone know? Oh, come on. Hi!
It's a legal, like, government division between 2 races where it's like segregation, but it's like legalized.
Mm-hmm.
So that for South Africa, they made it so that blacks and whites could not be in the same areas, and they had completely separate everything.
Excellent. What's a food desert? After you've heard all of these. A food desert is this. Let's empty it out. You got a supermarket here, and a supermarket there, and a supermarket here, and a Whole Foods there, and a Trader Joe's there, and a farmer's market here, and a community garden over here, and oh yeah, I have to get my carrot juice co-op up there. And maybe here's a convenience store. Here's a liquor store. Here's a Stop and Shop. Here's a bodega. And maybe if we're really, really, really lucky, there's one little tiny independent grocer that sells about half of what a regular supermarket does. That's a food desert. That's what we're talking about when we talk about food justice. I'm going to lay it on the line and tell you my own personal philosophy, because, you know, you're going to hear it anyway, so you may as well hear it now. I care about food justice. I do. I care about sustainability. I care about what I put into my body. Pillsbury dough girl notwithstanding. I do. I care about what I put in my body. I want to make sure that the water I drink is pure. I want to make sure that the food that I eat is clean. I want to make sure that it's accessible and pretty. And pretty, because it matters. Those really nice apples that look like jewels at Whole Foods. I want it to be pretty. But I want everyone else to have it too. And while we're celebrating Earth Month, I want to celebrate People Month. You are never, ever, 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 ever going to hear me say that a stalk of corn is more important than a human being. You will not hear me say that. And hopefully by the time we leave this room, you won't be saying it either, if you were. This is so wrong. I say this from the privilege of being able to step out. Not completely out. I'm kind of like this. I'll tell you my own personal story. As a matter of fact, I'm going to invite you to go shopping with me. I live in North Encanto, which is 92114, which is kind of a food desert. We have a Food for Less now that's kind of out of the way. That's it. And it took 30 years to get it. There was an Albertsons in Logan Heights, 92113. That closed when the City Heights Albertsons opened. And that's pretty much it. But I live on the edge of North Encanto and Lemon Grove and the college area, which is where I buy my food. Which is where I buy everything, really, because there's nothing to buy in Encanto. So, let's just take me through a Saturday. I wake up, I need cornflakes. So I go to the Albertsons in Lemon Grove. I decide I want orange